Hey everybody, Kempo Gurudas Srinyatananda, or as I'm known in secular circles, Dr. John Michael Salvato, and you're watching the Inner Alchemy program, a weekly show where we talk about ways to successfully begin living a life, an empowered life, and an intentional life. So on today's show, we're going to be talking about a little bit about this, the concept of intentional living. We're going to talk about the idea of who's writing your story. You know, as I was thinking today about what I wanted to share, I wanted to talk about this idea of 100% responsibility, taking 100% responsibility for every experience in our lives, whether they're perceived as positive or perceived as negative, and just asking ourselves, is it us that's holding the pen that's writing the story of our lives, or did we give that pen to someone else? So I hope you guys will jump on board and join the conversation, whether you do that by chat or you do that live. We'd love to have you, and we've invited some folks who may or may not be able to make it on the show today, but who will be guests on the show down the road. So, if you want to join the conversation, then we welcome you as well. So let's go ahead and just give folks a few minutes to get in here. And while we're doing that, so what I wanted to share is kind of the topic of my book. Those of you that, who haven't seen the book yet, it's called Shunyata, the Transformative Power of Emptiness in Esoteric Buddhism, New Thought, and the ancient Hawaiian spiritual tradition. And the idea behind this book is that you and I are imbued with total creative control over our lives, total creative control over every experience that we have. And what I mean by that is that there's not a single experience that we have that isn't directed by our thoughts. You might say that, well, you don't have control over what's going on in your life, but you have control over your response to what's going on in your life. And as a result, you have control over the experiences of your life. Is that experience a positive experience? Is it a negative experience? Is that experience an experience that propels you toward growth, or that compels you to take a step back to see what kind of lesson there is to be learned in that experience? The only way that we suffer in life is when we're trying to avoid something that we perceive as causing us pain, or when we hang on to something that we imagine is the cause for happiness or satisfaction. When we lead our lives with open arms, when we allow those experiences to come and go as they were meant to do, then there is no suffering. It's simply a matter of staying in the moment, because the moment is where the power is. So we would love to have you guys join us on the conversation today. Grab a cup of tea or coffee or your favorite beverage and jump on to the conversation. Tell us a little bit about your experience in life. This is a program where we share ideas. It's not a platform for me to get up here every single week and just preach to you guys. That's not my intention. My intention is to share ideas that stimulate conversation, that stimulate thought. Do you feel like you're in control of your life? Are you creating the destiny that you want? Are you creating the life that you deserve? And if so, then share that with us. If not, then ask yourself why and join in the conversation. So, I welcome Sean. I see that you've jumped in. Welcome to the show. We're glad to have new viewers. And if you guys want, if you're seeing something on here and you enjoy it, by all means, click the tell a little bird, which I see that Sean just did. I appreciate that. And join the conversation, guys, because we've got a couple guests who might be jumping in today, depending on their schedules, and we're really excited about that potential. People who are going to share with us some of the work that they're doing out there to help empower others, to help imbue others with a sense or a desire for cultivating primary greatness. In my own work, I often think about the legends, the stories, and I get emails from people all the time who say that they've seen me post that I'm not inclined toward theistic traditions, and that I don't believe in a personal God. And they say, well, then does that mean you're an atheist? And no, what it means is that I don't feel compelled to anthropomorphize or turn the God concept into a person, because I think that there's a problem with that for me personally, because I wouldn't want the flaws and the character defects of me as a person to be the characteristics of the God concept. I just don't see that as being logical. And so for me, that God concept can best be explained as pure awareness. And because of that, because I believe that divine source, that creative intelligence is pure awareness, then I have to believe that every experience I have comes out of pure awareness, that my true nature is pure awareness, that your true nature is pure awareness. And that these experiences that we're having are experiences of the creator experiencing itself, unfolding itself, realizing itself, if you will. So I've often thought that, when we look at ancient mythology, conventional wisdom tells us that that God, however you perceive God to be, kicked Adam and Eve out of the garden, out of paradise. I would suggest that it's more likely that Adam and Eve kicked that creative source, that pure awareness, out of the garden. That what really happened was, hey, welcome, Kath. What really happened was that we removed ourselves from that creative intelligence. We dispelled the creative process. We gave the pen away that was writing the story of our lives. And so that concept, that feeling of being cut off from paradise, is one in which we actually were in a prison of our own making, and the key was in our back pocket all along. So I think that the journey itself, the spiritual journey, the unfolding or recognizing of our true potential, comes when we realize that our true nature is pure awareness, that we've never really been cut off from that source. That what we've really done was just imagine or put blinders up that separated us from that creative intelligence. And when you do that in the business life, in the business world, I find that it eliminates that need to grind. It eliminates that need to get out there every single day and say, I need to go find customers. I need to get my message out there. I need. I don't operate from a place of need. And so when I wake up, there isn't that stress that I need to get 5 more customers. I need to make 10 more sales. I need to get my message out there, because there isn't need when you recognize that you're writing the story. And so instead, I would suggest that, for those of you that are entrepreneurs, go into your day, start your day by saying, what 3 things can I do today to ... What 3 things can I do today to attract the right customers into my business? What 3 things can I do today to expand my message? What 3 things can I do today to serve others and help alleviate suffering? See, there's the key. When I start my day asking what I can do to be of service to others. And that requires active listening. It requires engagement. Like I said, the reason that we do this show isn't because I want to get up here and share what's on my mind, because I could do that in my blog. I can do that on other social media platforms. But I love Blab because it allows me to engage with our viewers. And it allows people who might not otherwise be part of the conversation to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to jump in. I'm going to take a seat so we can have that conversation, so we can talk about this. We don't have to be experts in order to take a seat. Someone wrote me a message today and said, if you'd like to position yourself as an expert in social media or an expert in your business niche, let me know. And that's terrific and all fine and well and good for folks who feel like they're coming from a place of need and want, but we're not coming from that place. The same thing applies to relationships. If you go into a relationship recognizing that you're writing the story, and recognizing especially that every person with whom we interact is reflecting something back to us. They're reflecting back something in us that either deserves recognition and deserves our acceptance and our love, or something that needs to be forgiven within ourselves. When somebody's reflecting something back to us that we need to let go of, something that we need to heal, something that we need to free ourselves from, that other person isn't doing something to us. They're doing something for us. And so we can begin to recognize that every relationship is whole and perfect and a gift, exactly what it needs to be for us, to restore us to that place where we recognize our true nature as pure awareness. So the person that I might have perceived as being adversarial, where the person, let's face it, there are some people in our lives and we just say, oh, that person is such a bitch. Well, that they're reflecting something back to me from within me, chaotic data on the subconscious hard drive, if you will, of my subconscious mind. And so I have an opportunity. I can either delete that file, clear it, and move beyond that experience, or I can let that chaotic data continue to play. And maybe that chaotic data could be a virus and could corrupt the hard drive, so that then every experience becomes tainted by that chaotic data. So the choice is ours. And when you do that, it's so freeing to not feel like, I need to go and find the right relationship. I need to be in a relationship. I need to find customers. I need to get the right job. When you come from a place where you recognize that there is no need, that life is unfolding as it should, and that creative intelligence, that part of you that is the creator, that's holding the pen, determines the outcomes in your life. See, when you recognize that you're the one that's writing the story, you can be married to the process but divorced from the outcome, because you know that everything will always turn out the way that it's supposed to. And that's so freeing. That allows you to just really fall in love with the experience of life itself, and to stay in the moment, because you don't want to miss anything. So that's, that was the idea that I wanted to bring to the discussion today. And we call this inner alchemy, the science of conscious living, because it really is about transmuting those elements and turning them into gold, like the alchemists of old sought to do. It's about understanding the first law of creation, understanding the law of equivalent exchange, that in order to achieve something of equal or greater value has to be shared. Hey, I want to welcome, let's see, I don't have my glasses on here, Jerome on their first day on Blab. Welcome to Blab, Jerome, and we're glad to have you join the conversation here. And Phosphorus Toth, we recognize you as well, and make sure that I follow both of you guys and welcome you on Blab. What we're talking about today is talking about recognizing your nature as true awareness, recognizing that you don't need to give your power away to anyone else and let somebody else write the story of your life. And for me personally, that meant letting go of some of those ancient traditions, those ancient mythos, those ancient stories that are all about people, someone or something outside of ourselves controlling our lives. That the light is within yourself. That you are that creative intelligence. You are pure awareness, and so you create the experiences that you have in your life. And when you do that, you get rid of that excuse of relying on stories about your gods, and stories about your demons, and stories about your legends, and stories about your adversaries, the people in your life who you say created your problems. You created your problems, and you hold the key to your solutions. Now, the sun is just coming straight in the window right now, and you'll be blinded in a few minutes. I'll look like Casper the Friendly Ghost, So that's the conversation we're having. We would love you guys to join on the conversation. Be sure to click Tell a Little Bird. Let folks know about this conversation. Who's writing the story of your life? Have you given that power over to someone else, or are you the one that's holding the pen? We're talking about some of the concepts that are in my book, Shunyata, the transformative power of emptiness. So much of our lives we're told that we have to become full. That we have to have more greater relationships, greater jobs, greater income, more customers, a better job, a better house, a better car, and that feeling of needing more, that feeling of neediness, period, is what leads people to give their power away to say, oh, I have to just, pray for things to happen in my life. No, you don't. You just need to create those things in your life, to recognize you're holding the pen, and to recognize that emptiness is a great thing to experience, not a horrible thing. Because if you're not empty, how can you receive? How can you begin to manifest anything in your life until you're empty? If you're almost, for people who come to me and they say, John Michael, I'm experiencing financial difficulty in my life right now. I've got bills that are out the ass. I am just, so stressed out. Well, until you become empty, if you're filled up to here with bills and stress and anxiety and troubles, then there's only that much more left for you to receive anything new. But if you just let go of it all, if you just empty it and recognize that all of that stuff that's going on in your life is chaotic data, and that you hold the key to releasing that chaotic data, to clearing the subconscious hard drive, so that there's now room for you to write a new program, for you to write a new experience, for you to interpret. See, it's not about what's happening to us. It's about how we interpret what's happening to us. So you can interpret what's happening to you as though you're the victim, or you can interpret what's happening to you as though you are pure awareness, having these experiences for whatever purpose, whatever benefit they're going to bring to your life. So what about you? What's going on in your life? What's your interpretation of life? Do you feel, and for those that are watching right now, go ahead and text us your, a message. Do you feel like you're in charge? Do you feel like you're creating your experiences, or have you given that power to someone else, or something else, or circumstance or situation? Are you the victim, or are you the author? I'd love to hear from you guys. If you'd like a copy of the book, by the way, it's available on Amazon. It's available at bookstores around the country and I guess throughout North America right now. But you can get a free copy by going to prosperityreinvented.com and just request a free copy. We'll do a digital copy. Let's see if I can get out of the view of that blinding sun. There we go. All right, that's a little bit better. We'll see if I can stay out of it as the sun's starting to set earlier and earlier. Here we're in Pennsylvania along the Susquehanna River banks. Let's turn this a little bit more. There we go. And we would love to hear from you guys. Over the past week, we've done several shows. We've got some folks that are coming up on the show, and another author who will be sharing their book on 0 point energy. We're going to be talking about, and 0 point is sort of that what Einstein referred to as that vast, unquantifiable dark matter from which all, or dark energy from which all matter manifests. That's the stuff that creates your experience. You might call it thought in its purest sense. You might call it pure awareness in its purest and simplest of senses. It's that vast reservoir of unquantifiable energy, dark energy or dark matter, 0 point energy, from which all matter manifests. And see, when you begin to understand that, when you recognize that there's actually a scientific basis for creating your experiences. That it's not just psychology, and it's not spirituality, and it's not metaphysics. It's quantum physics. And that for me was a life-changing point. When I was a young man, I entered the seminary because I felt like my message, my mission, my objective in life was to tell people that their churches and their religions were the cause of suffering in their lives. That they needed to reach a point personally where they could let go of religion and spirituality because it was creating more harm than it was creating good. So I thought, well, if I go through seminary and I become a priest, and then I later became a bishop for the Eastern Rite, that I was going to be able to tell people that my job was to make church and spirituality and religion obsolete. And when I say that, people freak out and they say, well, then what a heretical thing to say. Yeah, absolutely. That was my mission in life, was to be the heretic that said, your religion is causing you to suffer. Your religion is causing problems. Your religion is the cause of bloodshed and wars and separation, or the illusion of separation. That if you really want to live a life that's centered on true light, in your life, then you have to let go of these anthropomorphized gods and religions and theological concepts that are separating you from who you really are. And who you really are is the creator in your life. So today we're talking about having that, taking that power back, taking responsibility for your life, letting go of the crutches. See, that's the thing that makes people a little uncomfortable. They don't want to talk about taking 100% responsibility in their lives if it means they have to let go of the gods and the demons and all of the other excuses that they have for failing. If your relationships suck right now, your relationships suck because there's chaotic data on the hard drive of your subconscious that's reflecting back to you in your relationships. So it's stuff you have to let go of. It's not the other person who's responsible. When you experience violence in your world, you're reflecting back violence that you haven't let go of. When somebody's being an asshole, they're reflecting that part of you that you haven't let go of. So when you stop and ask yourself, wow, this person is really being a bitch right now. When have I been like that in the past that created problems for me? And when you think back, you can let go. So here's Browser Jerome says, for someone who has been God-centered existence, this is different. Are you suggesting that there's no God, or that simply that there is simply more to the individual than we're accessing? Great question. And we talked about that briefly a little bit earlier. Several people have written to me over the past couple of weeks, and they've read my books, and they heard me say that I don't subscribe to this concept of a personal God, and they think that means that I'm an atheist or that I'm an agnostic. And so what I'm not saying is that there is no God. What I'm saying is the God that you created, that you turned into a guy, or we call that anthropomorphizing, the taking the concept of your own divinity and turning it into some external guy who, with the white beard, who sits up in an imaginary place called heaven, who directs your life and controls your life and punishes people. All of these really sick and distorted ideas that people have about God are the cause for their suffering. It's not that there's really their imaginary friend is not causing the suffering. So what I'm suggesting is that the God concept has been distorted. The God concept has been, I think it's really interesting that there's that this conversation is unfolding the way that it is, because one of the people who are viewing is somebody whose handle here is Lucifer Toth. And if you ask most quote unquote God-centered people what Lucifer means to them, they come up with every crazy idea about devils and demons and adversaries and all of this, but they don't recognize that in their own ancient texts, in their own scriptures, for those who come from the Judeo and Christian traditions, that the references to Lucifer are references to the very same person that those same people, those religious people, call their Christ. It's that embodiment of light. And that's that's an anthropomorphization. That's a projecting of the qualities within. The ancient primitive-minded people needed to get their arms around the God concept. They needed to get their arms around creative intelligence. And so they turned it into a person. They anthropomorphized it. They created stories and legends, just like they had to create stories about, the God who created thunder, because they needed to understand. Well, as we've grown and matured, and through science and wisdom and knowledge, see, here's the idea. I think that, when you take knowledge and when that knowledge is not rooted in pure awareness, then you don't have wisdom. So you can have somebody who's smart, who's got knowledge, without awareness, and that person is not wise. I mean, if you want to see a great example of somebody who's got knowledge and no pure awareness, look at Ben Carson. Look at Donald Trump. There's an example of somebody who can be a brain scientist or a brain surgeon and a complete moron, because he's got knowledge, but he hasn't got pure awareness, because he's rooted in his superstitions. He's rooted in his external ideas of these separatist gods, these evil, mean, judgmental, quote unquote, jealous gods. And so, yes, I would suggest that the God of the Bible is nonsense. I would suggest that the God of any organized religion is a mythological character who is not, on whom we are not based. So that the idea that people like to spout off that we're created in God's image would be a nice idea if that's how they actually lived. But instead, what they did was they created gods in their own images. You know, that's where that ancient story in the Hebrew scriptures comes from about the graven images. It's that they were turning their own shitty personal traits, their own shitty characteristics, into their gods. So they created this jealous God, this hateful moron that would destroy people because they didn't worship him, quote unquote. I don't embrace that kind of a concept of a God. For me, the divine principle is a principle of love. It's a principle of light, and it's a principle of wisdom. So I can't buy into the idea. Yeah, absolutely. Browser Jerome says, I think I understand. It's more like acknowledging and releasing the divine within. Absolutely on the right track. Recognizing that the source of your power is within you. The source of your wisdom, of your creativity, of if you want to use the word grace, the source of that creative power and pure awareness comes from within you. So the divine spark can never be something separate from you, or else it's just ego. You know, that imagining that there is somebody else that holds the key, that holds the power, that controls you and is pulling the strings, that's just giving away your power. And so what we wanted to talk about today was taking the control back, reclaiming the control of your life. And I can tell you personally that it's resulted in such a freeing experience for me. It's resulted in my being able to move forward in my life in areas where I've created blockages before. It's resulted in my looking at relationships that were pretty fucked up before, and saying, you know what, I created this. This is a reflection of something I have to let go of. And that's what I talk about in the book is taking back that control, taking back the responsibility for our lives. If you guys are watching for the first time and you're viewing this on the remote, feel free to click on Tell a Little Bird, share this, join the conversation. We're talking today about who's holding the pen that's writing the story of your life, and about the process of reclaiming the control of your life by recognizing that you're pure awareness. Like I was saying, that there are people out there who have knowledge, but they don't have awareness. And so where there's knowledge and no awareness, there's no wisdom. That was what happened. Browser Jerome, I was saying earlier that I believe that's a better analogy that can be used instead of the story that we find in the Old Testament, in the story of Genesis. I don't believe that the God concept would have thrown Adam and Eve out of paradise, but more likely that Adam and Eve kicked the God concept out of paradise. They separated themselves. They imagined this whole story. They created this whole bullshit tale about how eating from the tree of wisdom and knowledge of good and evil somehow separated them from their divine source. And I'm here to tell you that there's nothing you can do that'll separate you from your creative power, from your creative intelligence. And that you have to reclaim the control of your life, or else your life remains out of control. And it's not out of control because someone else is pulling the strings. It's out of control because you're just letting things spiral out of control. And so for me personally, I reached a point where I just said, I'm not going to be able to successfully help people. I realized as I grew older and I got more, became more mature, that that I wasn't going to be able to help people understand that religion was the source of suffering, that religion was the source of problems in their lives, by being part of the institution itself. That was idealistic. Maybe in my youth, I thought I could do that. I could get that message out there. But then I had to reach a point where I said, you know what, I just need to separate myself from the institutions. I need to separate myself, and that meant separating myself from the institutions in the Catholic tradition itself. That meant separating myself from within the institutions within Buddhism, which I didn't see as a religion. I see it as purely being a philosophy and a way of life that recognizes and takes that personal control and says, I am the cause of suffering in my own life. When something goes wrong, it's either because I'm clinging to something that I think is going to make me happy, or I'm trying to push something away that I perceive as causing pain. And the only way to avoid suffering is to move through those experiences perceived as good and perceived as evil, perceived as bad, perceived as painful, perceived as happy, perceived as satisfactory, and just recognize that they're all just experiences. That it's I like to say that the Four Noble Truths was that in common English was that shit happens, and that I'm the cause of the shit that happens in my life, and that there's a way to get out of that shit. And that I hold the key through the old eightfold path. I hold the key to overcoming the shit in my life. That might seem crude to some of you, but that's really what the Buddha was supposedly trying to teach. And so for me, I recognize all of these ancient myths as being myths. I recognize them as being legends, and they edify and support and give meaning to my life, because I can understand that's where the past where the past traditions came from. So I can now, I could listen to Christmas music and have no attachment to the religions attached to them. I could allow somebody to come to me for coaching who says, religion is an important part of my life, or spirituality is a part of my life, and that's important. And I saw the question that Lucifer Toth asked and said, I get where you're coming from, and I agree. Would you still call what you're talking about spiritual? And so, in the purest sense, yes, because I think that our spirituality, in the purest sense, in the truest sense, is about beginning to understand ourselves better, beginning to recognize that our true nature is pure awareness. And so that's really the purest version of the spiritual path. I think that's what everybody's looking for. But is it spiritual in that it's an organized school of thought or religious? No. So I think that's what we're starting to see. We're starting to see more and more people. Nancy, welcome. We're seeing more and more people who are on a spiritual journey, who have rejected religion. And I think that's promising. I think that's probably one of the best things to happen in humanity. So I think that when we look at things at a quantum level, we start to see that as vibrational frequencies increase, you start to let go of the things that are not necessary, that aren't supportive to your journey, that aren't beneficial to your growth. And that's what's happening, I believe, as a planet. That's what I think is happening as a people, is that we're starting to see, and when that happens, there's chaos. As vibrational frequencies increase, we experience greater chaos, because that's all of the shit, all of the crap from the subconscious mind, from the hard drive, if you will, that chaotic data just coming to the surface so that we can click delete. And delete and delete and delete. And so we're seeing that happen in our lives. We're seeing that start to happen with the violence around the world. We're seeing that start to happen with the false flag operations that are going on in our country. We're starting to be confronted with the reality that we are not different or separate from one another. When back in 1983, those of you who don't know my story, I'll share just briefly with you. I was walking home. I was a young monk walking home one night, and it was about 11 o'clock at night. And I was actually terminated from a position that I was working, moonlighting, and supporting the monastery through working as a security guard. And the head of the security guards found out that I was a gay man. And so he terminated me on the spot. Said he didn't want any faggots working for him. Excuse me. So I left and started walking home. I was in Hollywood, Florida, and the monastery was in Fort Lauderdale, and there was about an 11-mile walk home. And I was very fit, and so an 11-mile walk was okay with me. It was going to give me a chance to clear my head. I was really furious at the experience of homophobia, and so I was walking home. And when I got about a half mile away from the hotel, I was raped and beaten by 4 Haitian immigrants who at the time, in 1983, you've got to remember the boat people were coming over here from Haiti. They were being, physically and emotionally abused. They were unwelcome in South Florida. They were being treated very, very poorly. And they saw me in a security guard uniform, and I don't know whether maybe they didn't have security guards in Haiti, but they perceived me as being a cop. and they had a beef with the cops, and I can understand why they would have a beef from the cops. Well, I don't speak Creole. I speak very little French, and I tried to explain to them that I wasn't a cop, and I tried to understand what they were saying to me, and I only understood bits and pieces, and it all happened very fast. Long story short, I was raped and beaten. The gun was put to my head. The trigger was pulled. The gun, fortunately, misfired. Folks have said to me, don't you feel like, like God took you out of that experience or saved you or protected you? And no, I don't. I think that if their gods were real, if their anthropomorphized, guy in the sky was real, they wouldn't have allowed that experience to happen. But that experience was it resulted in 6 months later in my being diagnosed with full-blown AIDS, because those men were, I was a virgin at the time, and those men, actually infected me. But that experience, while it seems horrible and negative, and it was just one of the most, it was certainly the most violent experience I've ever had. But it was also a terrifying experience. And yes, it was, I can't find words for what happens when somebody puts a gun to your head and pulls the trigger. And you think when you come to, because I passed out at that point, because there was still a loud bang, and there was still, a feeling of something hitting my temple right here. It was probably just the gun itself. I don't really understand what happens in a misfire. I know there was powder burns around my temple, and the nerves are damaged around here. But I woke up and I thought I was dead. And I went into the 7-Eleven where they left me behind the 7-Eleven and asked that person if they could see me, because I wanted to know if I was dead and just, a ghost walking around or what. So that experience, as nightmarish as it was, turned out to be the greatest lesson for me, the greatest gift I could have gotten, because my life changed that night. And I let go of all of the external concepts of who was writing the story of my life and who was controlling my life. And I began to truly experience this feeling of recognizing that whatever happens in me, I don't know why, sitting in that police station when the cop who was equally homophobic, was asking me if this was just some kind of twisted sexual scene that got out of control, as though I was going to have, sex with 4 strangers behind a 7-Eleven, because that was supposedly what faggots, quote unquote, did at that time. I don't know why, when he said to me, well, what race were these people? I don't know why I said to him without thinking they were human. That's what race they were part of. Because it incensed me that he was trying to turn this into an us versus them situation. Violence was perpetrated against me because hurt people, period. It didn't matter what nationality they were. They were hurt people. They were hurt people because the very cop who was interviewing me was part of a system that was oppressing and abusing those people who then abused me. And my life changed that day. And I recognized that this was all about reflecting something back, and that if I wasn't willing to do the work and take 100% responsibility for the shit that was happening in my life, then I was going to continue to have those kind of experiences. And I'll tell you what, I didn't want one of those experiences ever again. And so things began to shift. And, 6 months later, I was in the hospital with pneumonia, and the doctors came in and told me that I would be dead within 18 months at the very latest, that I would probably not survive that particular bout of pneumonia, because very few people did. At the time, the diagnosis was GRID, gay-related immune deficiency, which later was changed. The name of it was changed to AIDS. And they said, you'll be dead before you're 24 years old. I was 20 at the time. Well, I left that hospital expecting to go back home to the monastery and find the support of my brother monks to walk me through the process. But nobody came to see me for the 30 days or 28 days that I was in the hospital. And when I left and I went back to where the monastery once was, it was an empty house. They had become so scared of this disease, this gay plague that was affecting so many people in South Florida and New York and San Francisco, that they up and left no forwarding address, no information for me, no message for me, no compassion. And at that point, I understood that the problem for the cause of suffering in this world was religion, because religion was based on fear. It was based on giving away your power and being afraid of what might happen if you don't do blah, blah, blah. And so I at that point made the decision that my path, that my work had to be to bring compassion. This was back in 1983, gold model coach. And in November of 1983 was when I was diagnosed. In May of 1983, May 10th, was when I was raped and beaten. And so, the journey for me, I had the good fortune that very next year to meet somebody called Louise Hay out in California. A friend of mine said, "You've got to come and listen to this woman speak." And Louise Hay shared with me, so those of you who know her work of You Can Heal Your Life and The Power Is Within You, which she wrote several years later, really, really helped me to understand that this was my story, that this was my creation, and this was an opportunity for me to heal, not just to heal from AIDS, not just to heal the physical ailment, but this was my decision to move forward in my life or not move forward, to be the victim or be the victor. And so I decided, okay, well, I'm ready to take control of this, and I'm not willing to accept the story that the doctors were feeding me, telling me that I'd be dead before I was 24. And, I stayed in the moment. She said, very, very clearly that, if you're going to succeed, if you're going to make good of this situation, then you have to learn to be present. You have to recognize the experiences, recognize the emotions, recognize the chaotic data as it arises. Hi, Janet, welcome. And guys, if you're watching this and you're finding value, please click tweet tell a little bird over in the left-hand side. Let folks know so we can have folks join the conversation and share some of the journey with us as we're talking today about who's holding the pen, who's writing the story of your life. And I'm just sharing a little bit about my personal story. And, several years after that, I had the opportunity to meet my root teacher, my primary spiritual teacher, who was a person named Majaya Sati Bhagavati, who was doing some tremendous work with people with AIDS, just as Louise Hay was in those early days in the 80s. Was as we got closer to the end of the 80s, the beginning of the 90s, I had a chance to meet Ma, and she said, there's two ways you can live life. You make the decision. Either life is going to consume you, or you consume life. And that, again, it was this idea of taking 100% responsibility, making the decision that I was the one holding the pen. So Browser Jerome says, I believe I'm on a spiritual journey, absent and tired of religion, but hungry for a spiritual source and inner peace, which I can reflect universally. Good for you. I consider the writing the story of my life concept very seriously. And as you know, the redirecting of a norm takes a minute to absorb. Yes, it does. But this is understandable. How does one make the decision to redirect negative experiences into a positive one? Thank you. I'll look for more info from you. Well, first of all, let me just say that another great question, Jerome. So the first thing, I've been saying browser. It says Bowser. I apologize. There's a copy of my book that you can download for free. This is not about selling books. I had somebody say last week, "Oh, you're just doing this to sell a book." Well, the book is available at Amazon. It's called Shunyata, The Transformative Power of Emptiness in the Esoteric Buddhism, New Thought, and Ancient Hawaiian Spiritual Traditions. But you can get the book for free. You can download the e-version of the book at prosperityreinvented.com. And I'm not here to sell books. That's not my purpose. If that was my purpose, I would be spending this time writing my next book, because this book came out in 2011. But I want you guys to download the book for free. I think you might find in there, Jerome, that there's some ideas on how you can turn these experiences around in your life. But I think really that the approach might need to be tweaked a little bit in that when negative stuff happens. Hi, Candace. When negative stuff happens in your life, or things that you perceive as negative, the key to turning those things around is letting go of that label of negative or positive. You see, when an experience happens in your life that you perceive as negative, it's just your perception of that experience. But when you say, hey, this is just a reflection of something that sits on the hard drive of my subconscious mind. It's chaotic data. It's a virus. It's a corrupt file. And so it's just reflecting something back to me that I can let go of. then that's no longer a negative experience anymore. So you didn't turn a negative experience into a positive one. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that right here. I just don't spell very well. Let's see. So Goal Coach just asked me to post the link for the book, and there it is, prosperityreinvented.com. Right there on that first page, you just put your email address in there, and we'll send you a link to download the book, or we'll send you the book. I think we send the book directly to you. It's about I don't know, 130 pages, 140 pages, 135 pages. So. And I hope it'll help you guys. I would love to hear more, either through this medium as we do this show once a week, or through email. You can email me at prosperity.reinvented@gmail.com. So Jerome, just go to that website and put your email address in there, because I don't send books out through this medium. Again, it's not the idea that we're trying to share here. So what we're trying to share here is just this idea that you hold the pen that's writing the story of your life. You hold the key to determine whether your experiences are perceived as positive or negative, or I would say that it's more important to perceive those experiences with neutrality. I call that being married to the process, but divorced from the outcome. So you just allow yourself to just be fully committed to the process of unfolding, the process of self-realization, the process of coming to terms with your own true nature as pure awareness, or your own divine nature, if you want to call it, as love and light, and then allowing yourself to be divorced from the outcome. To know that there's going to be some crap that arises, and that crap is just when you're, if you're looking at your hard drive on your computer for corrupt files, and you run a virus protection program, the virus protection program is going to find the corrupt files, and it's going to put them up on your screen, and it's going to say these are the corrupt files, and then you have to decide what to do with them. Are you going to leave them on your computer, or are you going to delete them? And that's what happens in life is as we begin that spiritual journey, then our attention works, and our intention works like a virus protection program, and it goes to the hard drive of our subconscious mind, and it finds all that chaotic data, and then it brings it up and puts it on the screen in front of us, and says, here's the viruses, here's the malware, here's the corrupt files, and then you have to make a decision to let them go. And the way that you let them go is by being gentle with yourself. You see, if there's a piece of chaotic data, maybe a false belief or a fear, we'll talk about relationships. If you find yourself in abusive relationships, then there might be chaotic data on the subconscious level that says that you're not worthy of love, or that you're not, that you don't deserve a better relationship. And so that chaotic data comes to the forefront and says, this is a fear that I have, that every time I get in a relationship, it becomes an abusive relationship. And so you manifest abusive relationships, or I'm not worthy of love. And so you manifest relationships in which you're not treated with the love and respect that you deserve. So what you have to do is be gentle with yourself. Don't beat yourself up and say, oh yeah, I created this situation. When I got raped and beaten, I take 100% responsibility for the experiences in my life. That doesn't mean that I said I want to be raped and beaten, but it certainly means that there were parts of my subconscious mind. There was chaotic data on the subconscious level that was buying into the bullshit story about my not being worthy or good enough because I was a gay man. And so I manifest the violence that I was holding on a subconscious level toward myself. And that's a pretty extreme manifestation of violence, but I didn't feel compelled to beat myself up over it or try and figure out why I manifest that experience. Instead, I just said, I don't ever want to have this experience again. And I have to learn that I am worthy of love. I have to learn that, and see, if you look at the big picture, you look at that whole story, and those of you who tuned in late, just go back and watch the rebroadcast. But you look at how that unfolded that night, where I had a boss who fired me for being a gay man. So there was homophobia reflecting itself. And it wasn't just his homophobia, it was internalized homophobia that was reflecting from the hard drive of my subconscious mind. And so there was that unworthiness, that you're not good enough, that you're second rate, if you will, because of who you are, because of your sexual orientation. And then a mile down the road, a half a mile down the road, there was that violent exchange of putting my life at risk. And then 6 months after that, there was the experience of AIDS. And so one of my teachers said to me, if you want to transform this experience of dis-ease, then you need to look at it differently. And this was Louise Hay, and she said, rather than looking at AIDS as being this horrible death sentence, then look at it as a manifestation of anger incorrectly directed at the self. And she insisted that what was happening to me was a manifestation of anger incorrectly directed at myself. That when we let go of that anger toward ourselves, when we stop beating ourselves up, when we truly begin to love ourselves, not in an egotistical way, but in a true and in an honest and sincere and vulnerable way, and say, I am broken, I am wounded, and take responsibility for the fact that we've wounded ourselves, and we've allowed ourselves to be wounded, we've put ourselves in harm's way. And when I finally started to do that, then all of a sudden, that acronym of anger incorrectly directed at the self took on a new meaning for me. And so from that day forward, I began to look at AIDS as always in divine safety. And so the disease itself became one of my greatest teachers. It became a daily reminder that 32 years later, I'm faced with. I'm not telling you that I'm in perfect health. I'm telling you that I'm in perfect experience. So there are days that I wake up and I'm exhausted. There are days that I wake up and I'm in pain. There are days that I wake up and part of the manifestations of living, I'm actually, I guess, the longest surviving person with full-blown AIDS in North America. And so according to the National Institutes of Health and the Centers for Disease Control and all those groups, what I see that as being is an opportunity for me to recognize that my, welcome Nick, that my experience is a daily reminder that I'm connected to source. It's a daily reminder that I'm holding the pen that determines the outcome in my life. And so if there's a day that I wake up and I'm feeling tired and I'm feeling exhausted, I learned to listen to my body over these past 32 years. I learned to say it's okay to not have to push myself, and to kind of lovingly just stay in that moment and say, okay, I'm feeling really tired, or I'm feeling depressed, or I'm feeling angst today. What's that reflecting from the hard drive of my subconscious mind? And what can I do to let go of that? What beliefs am I holding on to? What fears are guiding my experience? And just sort of, gently forgive that. Allow it to wash over me. Allow myself to recognize that I'm holding that pen and I can reclaim the control that says I'm always in divine safety. And so, if there was anything I could share with you guys, thank you so much, Creaky Joints. If there was anything I could share with you guys, and the whole reason I do this, my day-to-day life is really spent working with entrepreneurs. It's spent working with small business owners and helping them to reclaim control of their personal and financial fitness. But I decided on Saturdays that I needed to go a step further and help people just to really begin to cultivate primary greatness. To recognize the importance of being servant leaders, no matter whether they're entrepreneurs or small business owners or hairstylists or real estate brokers or whatever, to recognize that our lives begin to manifest the perfection that's our birthright when we start to love ourselves. And when we let go of the idea that someone else is holding the pen, when we let go of the idea that the control over our experiences is someone else externally pulling the strings, manipulating the circumstances, that's just not a part of who I am. And if there was something I can convey to you, that's what it would be. I think during this holiday season, it's a great opportunity for us. For a lot of times in the West, we become sort of myopic and xenophobic, and we think that this is all about our tradition. whatever that tradition might be, whether it's a Judeo-Christian tradition, a Buddhist tradition, a Muslim tradition. It's all about us, and it's all about our celebration. And all of a sudden, it's us versus them. Well, I think that as a people, as a planet, we're becoming, as a race, we're reaching a point where we have a choice. Our vibrational frequency of the world all around us is increasing, and we can either resist that and stay stuck in the chaos that we're seeing on the news every time you turn on the television, or we can allow ourselves to raise our frequencies by tuning into and being part of that experience of love, recognizing that you and I are pure awareness, experiencing itself, expressing itself. And when we allow our vibrational qualities to increase, that chaos, that all of that madness begins to come to the forefront first. That's the virus program running on your hard drive, saying, here's that corrupt file. You want to get rid of it, or you want to hang on to it? If you hang on to it, guess what happens? That corrupt file could fuck up all the other programs that you're running on your computer. And that can begin to create a cascade of drama in your life that you created yourself. And then you got to use a stronger virus protection program. So my idea in the book is just to be gentle. I recommend one of the simple traditions of using it in the Huna tradition. They have what's called Ho'oponopono. And that's where you just use what we call in Buddhism mantra. You just repeat to yourself gently over and over again, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. Namaste. They're not magical words that create the clearing of the stuff in your life, but that's a centering technique. And it brings you to the point where you recognize with gentleness that you were holding the pen, and you can forgive yourself. You can let go of that crap. You can let go of the chaotic data, and that it's okay when think about this. Let's to use another analogy. Let's say that you live in a house and there's some broken down furniture in your house. The kitchen table has one leg that's shorter than the others. The couch is caving in the middle because the cushions are just shot to hell, and so are the springs. And the chair that sits at the kitchen table has a leg that's shorter than the others, and the seat's beginning to crack. Well, you can come home every single day and you can experience that broken down house, or you can say, you know what, I got to get new furniture. But this week I can't do it because I've got bills. And guess what? Next week that comes up, there's going to be something else that's going to take away that money too. And you can't just get rid of the broken furniture, because if you took all that broken furniture and put it out, then when you come home from work the next day and it's time to sit down at the end of the day, you don't have a couch. So you say, I have nothing to sit on. I know, I'll go get that table and chair so that I can have dinner, and I'll just sit on the chair. Well, the wobbly broken chair starts to break even further, and that wobbly table with one short leg becomes a problem. And so you go out and you get the couch, because you just can't keep sitting at that chair like this, and you go and sit on the broken down couch, and before you know it, all that broken furniture is back in your house. But if you got rid of the furniture and you brought new furniture in, then when you come home that next day, you're in a new environment. So that's what we've got to do. And I'm going to wind up now, because we've gone for about an hour here, and wind up by saying, let go of the chaotic data, let go of the drama, let go of the hurt and the pain in your life. Recognize that they are just a reflection. They're a gift in your life, a reflection of stuff that you need to let go of, stuff that you need to forgive, stuff that you need to heal. And that there is a gentle path that you can use to forgive yourself, to let go of those beliefs that might be limiting, the chaotic data, the things that might just be a matter of perception. Maybe you perceive something is happening. When we have people who have broken relationships, a lot of times I'll just help them to look at those relationships and say, look at those bad experiences. I mean, when I looked at my rape, in the moment, I had no clue that what could be causing these men to react in such a violent way to beat me and with sticks and clubs and put a gun to my head and pull the trigger and all of the things that happened to me. But as I began to look at it after the fact, I began to say, these are hurt people hurting other people, and that my perception shifted. And I began to understand that it wasn't just these people who were out to get me. They weren't just looking to hurt me. They were hurt people hurting other people. So if you're in a relationship and there's a problem in the relationship, first of all, hurt people hurt people. And second, maybe it's just a matter of perception. Maybe that person wasn't trying to hurt you. Maybe if we shift your perception just a little bit, you can recognize that there was joint responsibility in the breakdown of communications or in the things that happen. But ultimately, that you are holding the pen that controls the interpretation or the lens through which you experience your life. And so, guys, I wish you peace. I encourage you to stay in the moment, because that's where the power is. Be grateful for what you've got, because if you can't be grateful for what you have right now, what makes you think you're going to be any happier with more? And always remember, the best is yet to come. We'll talk to you guys soon. Share this with your friends. Be sure to follow me. I'd love to have you follow me. Send me any messages on Twitter at Dharmacharya, or stop by and pick up a copy of the book, ProsperityReinvented.com. And I look forward to talking to you guys soon. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye. Namaste.